So, been trying to have a conversation about skepticism on a Discord channel, and thought I would try to flesh out some of my thoughts. So skepticism is a fantastic tool because it is part of what shakes us out of our preconceived notions and those things we are committed to without good reason. It breaks out our paradigms, or it can. Problem is you can have, I guess I'll say, a principle of skepticism that you merely apply, or you can have something like a wisdom of skepticism. With a principle of skepticism, you can literally be skeptical of anything. You can be skeptical that there are people in front of you speaking to you, if there happens to be a person, that it's actually a person, a solipsistic theory of solipsistic skepticism. That's a tongue tie. I can't speak at all. Wow. Or you can have what I'm calling, for now, a wisdom of skepticism. And a wisdom of skepticism is something like, I would argue, it's not automated, it's not quick, it's not a barrier, it's not a bastion to hide behind and be like, oh, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? I'm skeptical of that. And just, you can brush off anything with such a skepticism. How does it do that? So a skepticism with wisdom, perhaps that's a better way of saying it, is a skepticism that is tied into wisdom. And okay, what is wisdom, Matthew? Is that what you're actually talking about today? Maybe I am. I really like the conversation between John Vervaeke and Ian McGilchrist, where they finally kind of settle down and say you can't study wisdom in the lab, but you can study the process of wisdom. And that is because wisdom, in the end, is not a thing you achieve or get to. That's why no one who is wise will say they are wise, but it is a capacity one employs. And I would say, and I can't tell if Ian McGilchrist would agree with this or not yet, but it seems to me, or in fact Vervaeke, but it seems to me that wisdom has to do with one's ability to step back and observe the way things are interconnected, and in fact to be able to grasp the relevant pieces of information in a whole, such that you can see the whole. It's how quick you can do that. It's how effectively you can do that. It's how completely you can do that. And a mere principle of skepticism does not include that capacity. So, just going a little bit more on wisdom, there is a wisdom to being able to make things like puns. There is a kind of wisdom to being able to make rhymes. There is a kind of wisdom to, well, are those skills or are those... Let me think about that for a second. I think those are primarily skills. Yes. Okay. I was thinking of metaphor is what I was actually thinking of. Because I think one's skill with metaphor, broadly speaking, can be applied to those things I was just mentioning. But metaphor itself, I think, has more to do with wisdom. It might be a branch of wisdom, not the whole thing. But it seems to me that when one is improving one's skill at interpreting and understanding metaphor and dream and these kind of things, that's in the same realm as wisdom. Maybe wisdom is often expressed linguistically, whereas dream and metaphor is often more, or can be more symbolic. I don't know. Let's think about that more. At any rate, I got on this topic because of this conversation I've been trying to build back up to. We got into a bunch of other things, but build up to on skepticism, which is that this gentleman is employing skepticism, is doing so well, I guess I would say, but it feels a little stiff. It feels a little too principled. I guess I just said I don't think he's wise. Sorry about that. That's not what I mean to say. I mean that I believe he is blocking curiosity. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the way I want to take this now. So there is a type of skepticism that, if employed too principled and not with enough wisdom, is merely a block to curiosity. And I would even go so far as to say the kinds of things that Eric Weinstein has been putting forward in his podcast about the disc and perhaps even the gated, I forgot that one, gated narrative, whatever that is. Those are things which lack a certain curiosity. See, I could easily argue that humility is a superior principle to skepticism, in part because humility, I believe, will allow one to be open enough to gain wisdom without being so open that one merely clutters oneself up with a bunch of, for lack of a better word, nonsense. Things that one need not believe, but which one has opened oneself up to. So humility leaves one open without giving one a reason to close off other options. I didn't say that well. Humility leaves one open, but not too open, because humility works two ways. It is in some ways the way skepticism can work two ways. You can be skeptical of a new claim, and you can be skeptical of your own claims. And hopefully you can be skeptical of your own skepticism, in other words. And when skepticism is that well employed, I think it can also function as humility does. But what I guess I'm claiming is not very fruitful is a skepticism that limits curiosity, that prevents one from seeing new potentials, because one's first motive is to be skeptical. Now, I'm not sure what this gentleman has seen. He may be suspecting there is something very unwise in my own perspective, although he was skeptical of the idea of wisdom, which is partly what has me in turn skeptical of his skepticism. I think you have to have some notion of wisdom, even if it is not well defined. He seems to be more of a scientism type, follower of scientism. I wish they would just say scientistic or something. I don't. How would anyway? Sorry. So yeah, humility keeps us open to curiosity. It keeps us, but it doesn't keep us too open. I didn't say that very well. Why? So what humility, I believe, replaces the certainty with, which skepticism also helps break down certainty, but it does not replace certainty, which I would argue humility replaces certainty with commitment, which may not sound like a good thing, but the point is to not fully engage the emotional drive of certainty. If I'm saying I'm committed to this, there is a type of emotional commitment going, or emotional machinery engaged there. But it is the kind of machinery that is involved when you keep your word, or when you are maintaining your honor, or are maintaining a promise to a friend or to your wife, or etc. It is more about, well, I guess it's about social relationships in a sense, but it is also something that, well, there are people who do not question, I suppose, their commitments. I don't happen to be one of those people. I think it's healthy to question one's commitments because you can actually maintain your commitment better by knowing where you are weak, where your commitment is weak, and therefore you can strengthen it. If there is shadow material, to use a Jungian phrase, that would make you likely to break your commitment, that your commitment is triggering, then it is a great idea to question, okay, why do I have this commitment? And why should I keep it? And that kind of thing. Okay. I was going to try to sum up. So, skepticism as a principle, if only applied principally, is limiting. It's limiting of creativity. I would suggest, in fact, this is probably my biggest critique, that both certainty and skepticism play this part. They're inefficient. They block off too many possibilities that curiosity will open up and explore. I think we need all hands on deck, all minds engaged, as many as can, in the project of solving our collective problems together. And if we are relying too much on a bastion of skepticism or of certainty, we will be far less likely to fully engage in a new idea and in considering alternatives. So my structure uses humility, commitment, and alternatives, such that I can humbly consider alternatives against my commitments, and I can even invent new ones myself without endangering my commitments, because they're not certainty. Certainty would be an emotional bias that prevents me from doing those two things, from considering the alternatives, instead of just making barriers and bastions. Okay, that turned out to be a good video. All right, thank you.